How do I do it all? The Brezza gives me the power.
Urooj, I know this is a conversation we've had quite a few times in recent events, but when you begin to assess the various factors behind the downslide of the last few years, what to you stands out as the biggest problem area?
Well, I think the lack of a little bit of accountability, and then just sort of in this false pretense of a bubble that we are the ODI team number one. We've got three ODI batters in the top 10. We've got three bowlers in the top 10 in the bowling rankings, and this false facade of being the best in the world was taken massively out of context in the beginning years. So I'm talking about 2021, 2022. Look at that table that you've just shown us. Barring the 2022 World Cup, T20 World Cup, well, let's not forget, courtesy Netherlands beating South Africa, that Pakistan went through. Pakistan was packed bags and going home after playing Bangladesh. So you look at that, we've been at the bottom on 3-4 occasions now, and it's just not good enough. But the problem therein lies that where's the honest reflection of reading into those numbers? And the problem was that Pakistan just did really be sincere and honest to themselves by and large in terms of where Pakistan actually lied, in terms of quality in the personnel in the squads that were made up, and also who we played, the quality of the sides we played against, no disrespect to anybody, and also where we've played and the surfaces we've played in. So I think all of that had to be put into context. This is purely from the cricket aspect of it and the player aspect of it. And I think that false pretense that we are the best in the world, we've got the best players, which led to a lack of realization and honest introspect, which then inhibits you from learning and getting better because you think you're right up there with the best in the world, which we were massively not.
The middle order looked undercooked. Urooj, when you spoke to us at the start of the tournament, you did feel like the batting will be a cause for concern. Spin has been covered enough. But when you look at someone like a Tayyab Tahir, there's not a lot of evidence, at least as far as when you assess a player's numbers from the outside, as to why they're in the squad, and even the role felt confusing at times.
Yeah, I mentioned at the start of the tournament that Pakistan had a massive underbelly with that middle order. And the problem is the players that you've stuck with for the past year and a bit at the eve of the ICC event, they're nowhere to be found. And it just feels like it's all spiraling down. So you've got Tayyab Tahir, who's got obviously not in there fit for that role. Who obviously hasn't churned out the performances that he has in the past, or doesn't have obviously that experience in that domestic level as well. Khosdil Shah hasn't played ODI cricket in over a year and a half. Fahim Ashraf obviously was meant to obviously be that middle order finisher bowling all-rounder. We had Amir Jamal and Irfan Khan Niazi who disappeared off the circuit completely. Nobody knows where they went away. So Pakistan, just from a squad point of view, Abdullah Shafiq, let's go at the top of the order. If the guy has a technical issue, fix it. Get him back in the system. You spent 2 years with him, and then just because he got 3 in South Africa, you're off with him. So I think those kind of things. And Babar and Rizwan also haven't evolved with the time. So Pakistan, from that batting point of view, and then you go around and saying things like Tayyab Tahir is your next finisher, middle order finisher. I'm not quite sure. So I think there was a lot of confusion and poor squad selection, to be honest. And I think we were on the back foot once that 15 came out.
We talk about a lot of problems on the field, but ultimately it all stems downwards from the very top. Now, Pakistan has had, 4 chairmen, I think, in the last 3 years. And I'm going to be very blunt and say that a few of them have had no idea about cricket or how to run a professional board. You know, the PCB is probably one of the higher performing, bigger earning institutions in Pakistan. You know, I'm looking across private and public institutions. It makes money. It's certainly the highest paying tax body, sports body in the country. It needs to be run properly by people who have experience of running these organizations, by people who have knowledge of cricket. You know, the last kind of pairing that I saw that was in charge at the PCB was probably Ehsan Mani, who has tremendous experience of running cricket boards and cricket administrations, and Wasim Khan, who's now at the ICC, but was with the PCB as the chief executive officer. Since then, there's been churn there, and you know, I'll say this: Mohsin Naqvi, for all his strengths, is a man who has very little time on his hands for the game because he's the interior minister of the country. You know, that is a serious job, and one that requires a lot of attention, a lot of time, a lot of energy. And then what you have left after that to give over to cricket, he's done a great job with the stadiums. Like, I think we have to acknowledge that, you know, he working against time, he's invested a lot of money into it, maybe too much, but he's gotten stadiums the upgrades that they needed. But what he's done with the domestic structure, what he's done with the hirings of coaches and personnel, and how he's kind of been involved in team selections, the hiring of mentors for exorbitant salaries with very little kind of accountability for what they do and what they're producing, the number of people he's gone through, the way he's turned the PCB into effectively a government organization, which is, I say that in a not complimentary way, that it's become like a political government organization, a government office almost, and the PCB didn't used to be like that. I think those are things that have really affected the game, and they stem, like I say, when you give one person that much power at the top to do anything, and that one person is maybe not the best person for the job, or he's been appointed purely because he is a political convenience, then you're going to have these kind of effects. And as I said before, again, if it collides with a downturn, a natural, maybe cyclical downturn in the existence and life cycle of a team, then you're going to get the kind of results and the kind of chaos and the kind of disarray that you've seen in Pakistan cricket over the last couple of years.
Now, you brought up so many points. When you consider the impact of the inexperience of administration in the way the domestic calendar is working out, I know there have been lots of comments and debates around the feasibility of some competitions, the need of others. All of that combines to hamper, at the end of the day, the talent pool coming through?
I think so, yeah, because you're not. I don't think you're giving them enough time to play in the best competitions or enough time to develop. Like this season, Pakistan has decided to introduce 3 new tournaments to an already jam-packed calendar. A few seasons back, Pakistan had stripped down its first-class system, its domestic system, to have one Quaid-e-Azam trophy and a couple of white ball tournaments. It was a 50-over and a T20, and then there was the PSL. And the first-class tournament, this was Imran Khan's plan. I didn't quite agree with the size of that change, because they cut it down to like 6 teams, and in a country with a population of 220 million plus, I think you need to have more teams. But the structure seemed to be working, and it seemed coherent in that you had 6 regional teams. Maybe you increase that to 8 or 9. Oh, sorry, they had 8, but maybe you increase that to 10 regional teams, and you stick with that. But because you had administrative changes at the top, and because people came in with political agendas that they wanted to scrap out everything that had come in Imran Khan's premiership, they changed the first class setup. They brought in departments back. So that's an extra first-class tournament. Then they had the Quaid-e-Azam Trophy, which is one existing. This year, they've put in the Champions Cup for ODI, for 50 overs, for 20 overs, and for first class. They've squeezed them into a calendar so that your season now stretches from August till effectively pretty much May, June. And what it's done is put a load on players so that a lot of them are playing in competitions at home when they could be playing in, for example, leagues outside of Pakistan and improving their white ball games in higher quality competition. So it's become like this really incoherent mess of a calendar where they're not being able to manage their players' workloads as well as they should. I'll give you an example. Naseem Shah and Shaheen Shah Afridi and Babar were all denied NOCs to play in various leagues at the start of in the summer of 2024. So I think Naseem was supposed to play in the 100. They were denied those NOCs with the message that you guys we're doing it because we need to manage your workloads through our very busy home season coming up. And Pakistan had 9 test matches, 7 of them at home this year. Naseem Shah and Shaheen Afridi, who were taken out of these leagues to play in these test matches, which is fine, that's your prerogative, you do that. But then how was the workload managed? Naseem played 2 test matches out of 9. Oh, Shaheen played 2 test matches out of 9. And Shaheen played 3 test matches out of 9. Neither of them played 2 test matches back to back. And neither of them officially was actually injured either. So, it's that kind of, you've stuffed your domestic system with so many tournaments and you've made it mandatory with some weird, inconsistent NOC policies. You've made it mandatory for some players. You're just affecting their player development, which I think you see on the world stage when you see a lot of stagnating players on that side, like Babar, like Shaheen, like Naseem Shah, mostly I think like Shadab Khan. You see players who are just not developing from a pretty good, talented base that they had, but they've just not been able to develop. And of course, you're running through so many coaches. Gary Kirsten didn't even lead Pakistan in an ODI game before he was sacked. You're having so many different coaches that if a player has a problem, like Babar, maybe like Shadab, which coach do they go to kind of work on that issue with? Do they go to the coach who was there yesterday, or the guy who's there today, or the guy who's going to be there tomorrow? Because they're going to be 3 different guys, So, yeah, that's pretty much, I think, like some of the issues with the side at least.
Yeah. We've had enough tournaments of late where we've ended with asking you questions about what the problems are. Now we're asking you, what is the possible solution? How could things improve for Pakistan?
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's a whole combination of problems. There's like even Osman just touched on it. There's a whole sort of amalgamation of layers that you peel back, and there's problems at every one of them. I mean, you start right at the top. We've had sort of people go in and out in terms of that chairmanship position, where you come in someone at the helm of affairs, and then they bring their own team, and it's almost like a sort of a show of power where I want to do stuff the way I want to do. So we'll get rid of the system that was there before, rather than picking out the good from it and churning it out and trying to make it better. Then comes in, obviously, the massive turnaround in our domestic structure. Domestic structure, along with that first-class structure, which was yielding out players time and again at the regional system. So there's massive macro-level issues there. And then a lack of consistency. You look at people appointed, Gary Kirsten and Jason Gillespie. And I've said this before as well. Jason Gillespie was left to a mere match day analyst in his own words, and rightly so, because the selector said, I'm going to pick the 15, I'm going to pick the 11. We're in the world of professional sport. We're a test playing side, and it's almost making a mockery out of us. Babar Azam, the chairman, during the World Cup, when he's captain, said, well, we're backing the captain, but we look into the performance after the World Cup or the Asia Cup, if I remember correctly. So the kind of things, all of them then ties down to the players playing for their roles or playing for their spots in the side. Because of the lack of the domestic structure, you don't churn out the quality that you're looking for at the top level. And your role models, if they're playing the brand of cricket which is outdated, the guy who's obviously trying to make a difference gets left behind because you can't drop the Babars and the Rizwans in your sides. So the next 18-year-old coming through is then again batting for his position. So the product that you're sort of cooking out, or in terms of the product that you're creating, is not of the quality either. So massive lack of consistency and accountability, the right people in the right places, and a lack of proper domestic structure to go in hand with all of that.
If a year from now or any amount of time from now, Pakistan want to go out there and get a high-profile overseas coach, they will have their own issues to consider before accepting the job.
Yeah, like in any case, I think international coaching jobs are not as attractive as they used to be, because if you can pick up coaching work in 2-3 leagues, you're making more money and having more time on your hands anyway than an international coaching job. But I think what Pakistan did with the examples of, and it was abysmal how they treated both Gary Kirsten and Jason Gillespie, like really just, not apart from just letting them go or sacking them, the way they handled it and the way they dealt with them through the ends of their tenures was absolutely abysmal. And that word will spread around, coaches talk to each other, ex-players talk to each other, and how I can't see anybody in their right minds who would want to come and work for Pakistan from the outside. Like you may not need a foreign coach, you may find somebody. There's a couple of guys in Pakistan who might do a decent job. Abdur Rahman is a local coach who's worked well. But even with those local coaches, if you have an administration that's so trigger happy, what kind of assurances will anybody come in with? What kind of security will anybody come into this job with, knowing that, hey, look, I may lose a bilateral series that nobody cares about, which is fairly high profile, but it doesn't really matter. I may lose one to like England. If I lose 3-0, then I may be sacked the next day, even though I'm building and I've been told to build a side for an ICC event further down the line. So, I mean, I would be really surprised if Pakistan were to land. And Aqib's role, by the way, is his stint is supposed to come to an end at this Champions Trophy now. He was only an interim white ball coach and an interim red ball coach, I think. So, who they don't need to pick a red ball coach in a hurry because they're not playing a test match until October now. But they have a few white ball assignments. Who will come and coach Pakistan, given kind of the chaos and the churn that they've gone through? I don't think anybody in their right minds would.
How do I do it all? The Brezza gives me the power.